This is the unboxing video for the DB600. So the DB600 comes in two boxes, the float section and the instrument tube, which is the long skinny box. On top of each box, there is a QR code that will provide you a link to more information about how to set it up, the quick start guide. So there's a QR code on the DB600 float, and there's a QR code on the instrument tube box. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open these boxes, identify the parts, and show you how to put them all together. So before we start, we're going to look at the tools that we'll need and a few consumables that we'll use when assembling these items. So we're going to need a box cutter, a sharp retractable knife. We're going to use a shifting spanner. The larger the better that you've got. We are going to use a ratchet wrench, which needs both a 13mm socket and a 17mm socket. Now, ratchet is ideal because we're going to need to use it to tighten up more quickly than using open-ended or ring spanners. We'll need one 16mm open-ended or ring spanner, either will do. We are going to use some cable ties. We are going to use a pair of side cutters, and we are going to need some the Krytox grease that came with your sonde. So stainless steel has a tendency to gall, especially if it has any build-up over time. So if we don't use lubricant before tightening the screws and the nuts, then we may not be able to undo them fully when we come to service the buoy. So ideally, you should use some Krytox grease or even a nickel anti-seize if you have it available. And then finally, we'll need to add a stainless steel padlock if we want to lock the A01 on top of the instrument tube. So that's the recommendation. We actually should need two padlocks. We have an alternative of split rings inside the boxes, but for security, we recommend that you supply your own stainless steel padlock suitable for the environment you're deploying the buoy into, which may be salt water. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and we'll work on the instrument tube first. So use the box cutter to open the box. And from within the instrument tube, we identify the components. So first thing is to identify the bag of pieces that comes in the instrument tube box. This has got the locking collar, all the bolts that you need, as well as the mount for side mounted sensors such as the DCS. So keep this bag safe. We'll need these parts shortly. And then inside the box, we have the instrument tube. But so the instrument tube currently has the ballast chain attached. It's probably easiest if we detach the ballast chain before we remove it from the box. So from here, I will remove the chain. So we use our side cutters, and we use this to detach the two or multiple cable ties that are holding the chain onto the side. And then we use our shifting spanner on quite a narrow setting, and we use that to undo the shackle. So I'll show you it on this one first because it's easier to see. But we use the shifting spanner adjusted to the flat width of the shackle, and we use that to undo the shackle. So we actually want to undo the end that is connected to the top of the instrument tube. And once it's loose, then you hold it so that you can pull the chain off and put it to one side. So I've unboxed everything and I've laid out all the components so that I can explain to you what each piece does. So this is the instrument tube. The float box only has the float. So the only thing in that box that you'll find is the float itself. Everything else will be in the instrument tube box. So the parts of the instrument tube that are important are the top section. So this is what sits on top of the DB600. It has an alignment piece that fits within a notch within the DB600 itself. So that makes sure that the instrument tube is not twisting within the DB600. Within the box, we have a two-part locking collar that sits around the midsection of the instrument tube, and that prevents the instrument tube being able to lift out of the DB600. And so that locking collar is fixed to the buoy using to the instrument tube using two M10 nuts that are fitted with nylock nuts to prevent them from undoing. So we'll go through that shortly. Then on the end of the instrument tube, we have the mounting bracket for the side mounted options, such as the DCS, Doppler current sensor from Andra. And that bracket mounts on the side using two M6 screws that are included with the package, and the M6 screws include the spring washer and the flat washer. And then we've removed the ballast chain from the mooring connection point of the instrument tube. So this is required with the DB600. The ballast chain gives the buoy additional weight down low so that the stability of the buoy is improved. The weight is important. If you remove the chain, the buoy may be less stable. You can shorten the length of the chain by looping it around the connection point using the shackle, which can fit about 3 loops on it. Or you may also like to install it down the center part of the tube and have it sit in the bottom of the tube where the sonde sits above that if you're really dealing with very shallow deployments. So that will still give you the same weight if you have the chain inside the tube. It still gives you the same weight, still has it down quite low, but doesn't hang the extra meter that it would normally hang. But the normal recommendation is that you use the shackle to connect the chain to the ballast chain, which on the other end has another shackle and a thimble where you would attach your mooring rope. So we can go through later the types of mooring systems involved, but that's where the mooring system connects to the buoy. Okay, so those are the key pieces. Now we'll look at how to assemble the instrument tube into the buoy. Before we install the instrument tube in the buoy, we actually need to remove the top section or off the top of the instrument tube itself. So using our side cutters, we need to pull these pins out from that hold the top hat on the top of the instrument tube. Okay, so just cut both of the cable ties that are holding those pins in position. They can be discarded, and pull the pins out. And place to one side. Now, this top hat is what fixes to the underside of the AR1. So we'll be doing that in a separate video. For now, we keep it off to the side. Now, one of the other parts inside the kit were these locking pins. So the locking pin can be used to, when you've got the top hat on the instrument tube and the pins installed, you can put the locking pins through and then flare out the ends to prevent the pin from pulling back out. So when you need to be able to open the tube, you then need to bend the legs of the locking pin back, and then you can remove the locking pin. So that's what's included in the box, is 2 of those locking pins. However, what we actually recommend is that instead of locking pins like that, that you actually use a padlock. So we recommend a padlock because it's completely reusable. And it gives you the security that once you've got the pin installed, once you lock it, the top hat can't be opened to access what's inside the tube, and the AR1 cannot be removed off the top of the instrument tube. So We recommend that you use your own stainless steel padlock, but if you don't have that, you can just use the locking pins that are included with the kit. So in a later video, we'll show you how to fit the top hat onto the bottom of the AR1. For now, we'll just take it off, put it off to the side, and we'll continue to assemble the DB600. So this is the DB600 float. This is what provides the buoy, the buoyancy. You can see the features of the DB600 are it's got built-in lifting handles that come in very useful. We have the notch that is used for the alignment of this to stop the instrument tube turning within the float section. And we have this circle, which is a recess used to house the top of the instrument tube. So when you're preparing the buoy, you need to make sure that you identify this as the top. Obviously the bottom is quite a flat bottom of the float, with the only feature that you can see is the notch for the alignment piece. So we'll now take the float and we'll slide it over the top of the tube, making sure that when we're sliding it over the top, that the alignment piece and the notch are nicely aligned. So now we've installed the instrument tube inside the DB600 float. So we're going to apply the locking collar that prevents the instrument tube from being able to be lifted out of the DB600. So the two-piece collar fits around the instrument tube just below, just on the underside of the float. So this is the bottom of the float. We're doing this upside down for ease of demonstration. And we're using the two M10 screws and nuts that came with the set to fix the locking collar. So the nuts are actually nylock nuts, which means they have a piece of nylon inside that prevents them from undoing from vibration. So these screws and nuts are stainless steel. Now, stainless steel has a tendency to gall. If there's any kind of debris or anything caught inside the thread, it can actually lock up and prevent it from being undone, to the point the only way is to actually cut it off. So to minimize the chance of galling, we're actually going to be using some Krytox grease that comes with your sonde. The alternative is you can use any other type of anti-seize. There's lots of brand names out there, but Tefgel is a common one. Teflon-based anti-seize or special nickel-based anti-seizers are particularly effective for stainless steel. So what we do is we apply some of the grease to the thread, and then we'll do it on both of the screws. And that should help minimize the tendency to gall. So the screw has one flat washer, and then you install through the two holes of the locking collar, and you put the other flat washer on the other side, and then fix the nylock nut just to hand tight at this stage, and then we repeat on the other side. So we put the screw with one flat washer through the locking collar, put the other flat washer on, and then the nylock nut, and again to hand tighten. And then we use our 16mm ring spanner and 17mm socket to tighten the screw set. Now the nylock nut is actually a slightly larger width than the head of the M10 bolt. So that's why we need the 17mm socket to go on the nylock nut. And then we tighten. Okay, so as I'm tightening up the other side, just one point to note is that it is best if you have the two wings of the locking collar at the opposite angle from the angle of the notch. So that just prevents one of the wings being able to slide into the notch and allowing the instrument tube to wobble around a bit. So that's one tip when tightening up, that you have the wings of the locking collar at the opposite angle to the notch. So the notch is like this and the wings are like this. Okay, continue to tighten until tight. So now we're going to fix the DCS bracket to the side of the instrument tube if you're using the DCS. So if you're using the Doppler current sensor, the DCS from Andra, or other side mounted options, this is the point at which we fixed the mounting bracket. So the mounting bracket is fixed with the two M6 screws that come with the spring washer and the flat washer. So the sequence is screw head, spring washer, flat washer. And then you put the DCS bracket in position. You install just one of the screws to hand tighten. And then you use a 10mm socket to tighten the top of the M6 screw head. Now, the other parts come with the DCS itself. So the DCS is supplied with a bracket that fits within these notches and a U-bolt that secures the bracket to this mounting bracket itself. So when it's in this position, you can slide the cable connector between the teeth of the bracket, apply the U-bolt, and then put the nuts on at that point. Okay, so that's if you've got the DCS. So the last step for assembling the buoy is that we reattach the ballast chain. And so the ballast chain is about 1 meter long. At the bottom of the chain, we have another shackle on the thimble for the mooring rope to be attached. And we have the shackle that I removed earlier when pulling the instrument tube out of the box. And so we put the shackle through the attachment point, connect the chain, and then tighten using a shifting spanner down to quite a narrow width that fits around the flat head of the shackle. So we can use the leverage to make sure that we get that nice and tight. The longer the shifting spanner, the better, because what that does is the shackle itself is a D shape, and as we tighten this, that causes the D to compress, and the spring of the shackle is what holds that bolt tight in position. Now, sorry, I should have also put some Krytox grease for anti-seize properties. And so you should check this periodically, say annually, to make sure that that pin remains tight, because otherwise your system may actually detach from the mooring line, which would be unfortunate. Okay, and so once we've got that ready, then we just use some cable ties just to attach the chain to stop it kind of banging around. And that is a DB600 ready for attachment to the mooring system and for mounting of the AO1 on the bracket that will then be applied back to the top of the instrument tube. Okay, so refer to those videos for more information.